Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation to come here. It's really a pleasure seeing the customers. I'm an elected member of the San Francisco Retirement Board. Perhaps you've seen my name on a ballot over the last 25 years. I've served on the Retirement Board, and I'm seeking re-election. They're 5-year terms, and I want your vote. So, you'll be getting a ballot in the mail next week, and so what you have to do is put an X next to my name, put a stamp on it, and sign it, and then send it off. Or you can bring it here, and they'll send it inter-office mail. What does the board do? It's a 7-member board. 3 of us are elected by the members, and here is your chance to have a role in democracy. The other 2 members of the board are police and fire. My opponent is a retired police officer. If you don't put an X next to my name and send it off, then all 3 members will be from the police and fire ranks. The police and fire represent 15% of the membership. They already have 2 seats, and they want all 3. Okay, this is wrong. No other pension fund in California even allows this to happen. Other public pension funds have designated seats for a police officer or for a retiree or for an active member. This could not happen, and there's a good reason why. Because it's too much concentration of power in the wrong area. 85% of the members are us, non-uniformed, which is what we call miscellaneous, which is even derogatory. They're miscellaneous members. So if you don't vote for me and my opponent wins, all 3 members will be police and fire. And how much do they care about you? Okay, have they ever come here and talked about your benefits? Have they ever, tried to get you enhanced benefits?
No, we think we subsidize it.
To a large extent, the miscellaneous members are subsidizing the others. This is all about representation. You need to have some miscellaneous member, some non-safety officer to take care of your interests, and that's where I come in. Plus, you need to have someone who has investment expertise. Okay, what does the board do? 2 very important things. It manages the defined benefit pension plan, and it oversees the deferred comp plan. Okay, every month, every paycheck money is taken out of your paycheck. It's matched by the city. Okay, the board takes those contributions and then invests those. How much bonds, stocks, cash, hedge funds, and all other asset classes. And the board hires the managers. Okay, so that's what the board does, and it sets the employer contribution rate to the city. So very, very important duties for the board, which is why you should care. So I know a lot of active members, the younger ones, they don't care. Oh, I'll get a pension when I retire. Well, what pension will you get? Why is it important to have an investment professional managing your finances? Would you rather hire an investment professional or a cop to manage your money? It really boils down to that. I mean, it really boils down to that. I mean, I have the credentials, an MBA from Berkeley. I have a CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst designation, which qualifies me to manage money institutionally. Okay, also I teach at San Francisco State University, and have done so for a very long time as well. And the Dean of the Business School endorsed me for my re-election campaign as well. Linda Obrey endorsed me for my re-election. Very important to have an investment professional. So what does the board do? How to divide the assets, which is also your most important decision for your deferred comp plan. How much stocks, bonds, cash. Why is Casciato running against me? He was drafted by Driscoll and a few others, and Local 21. What does Local 21, Local 798, and POA have in common? They all want hedge funds, and the more the merrier. That's what this is all about to a large extent. Your representation, and do you want hedge funds? What are hedge funds? You tell me. What I do know about them, they're very, very high fees, 2% of the asset value and 20% of the profits. So if they earn 10, they get 3.5 and you get 6.5. If they earn 5, they split it 50-50, okay, with your money, okay? And none of the downside. If they lose a lot of money, oh, we're sorry for all the inconvenience. High fees. Number 2, high risk, okay? Staff has said they're lower risk, but let me ask you this. Bear Stearns was brought down in 2008 by their high-quality hedge fund, which led to Bear Stearns' bankruptcy, which made the 2008 global financial crisis worse. These were hedge funds. In 1998, a Nobel laureate, listen to this, Myron Scholes won the Nobel Peace Prize as he was heading the long-term capital hedge fund, which nearly brought the United States financial system to its knees. This was another hedge fund. So tell me again why they're low risk? I don't get this. That's number two. Number three is lack of oversight and regulation. A lot of these are domiciled or headquartered in the Cayman Islands. They're not overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission, and they don't pay income taxes on it. And while we're on hedge funds, we've already invested, over my negative vote, I was the only negative vote against hedge funds. We committed $250 million to hedge funds October 1st. Staff will not tell which managers and how much money they got. The only asset, to summarize, high fees, poor oversight, and liquidity. These are hedge funds, and I've been the most vocal person against it. And I wrote a letter to Warren Buffett asking his advice. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. Actually, I went to the same grade school that Warren Buffett did. I go to the Berkshire Hathaway meetings. And so they didn't ask my question, so I wrote him a letter, and he responded. This is a personal letter. Go see it on my website. Herb would not go with hedge funds, prefer index funds. So even Warren Buffett says no hedge funds. But our staff is committed to hedge funds. But that's the decision of the majority, and I fully respect the majority viewpoint. So now more than ever, you need a watchdog to make sure that they make good decisions. And I guarantee you, Casciato has no concept, no interest whatsoever to ask any questions or to do his due diligence on these investments. So that's why you should vote for me. Experience, I've done this for a long time. I'm an investment professional, and I will be your watchdog on the retirement board. So that's why I would love for you to vote for me. So you'll get a ballot in the mail right around next week. It's a light green envelope, so make sure you put an X next to my name and take care of it. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, so, and we're
Contribute from your paycheck to the pension fund.
But I don't
Then,
want
then you get,
anymore.
then you get to vote. It's as simple as that.
That's not what I understand.
No,
I
that's-
think you.
No, if you're in the pension plan, you get to vote, period.
Period.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're paying into the pension
Yes.
plan, that's different than the union.
Right, it's not
Something-
union-based,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Maybe you can talk about the
Good
COLA.
question, yeah.
You want you to, the COLA.
Yeah, let me talk about why it's important to have an investment professional. It is related to the cost of living adjustment. This is the supplemental COLA, up to 3.5% of your pension when you retire, and it's compounded. That depends on the earnings of the fund. So if the fund earns enough, which is above our long-term assumption, now 7.5, then we can grant the cost of living adjustment. Okay, so that's why it's relevant. The other reason why it's relevant to have a good people to oversee your pension fund is the better it does, the less active members will contribute. And this is the nature of the video that my opponent is sending around, saying, "Oh, you cost money." What investment was it? Why? No details at all. So you'll see that when people lie, there's no details. And that's the story there. But the better the fund does, in the long run, the less employees will contribute as an active member, number one. And number two, when they retire, they have a better chance to get the cost of living adjustment.
And why did Bob Muscat oppose the cost of living clause? COLA.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Question is, why did he oppose that? I don't know. I was never even invited to Local 21 to pitch for their endorsement. But he sent me that letter of lack of confidence. First time I saw the letter when it was published in the POA journal, asking me not to seek re-election because they lost confidence in me. Never told me why. I'm difficult to get along with? I don't know. I seem okay, don't I? I mean, I haven't started an argument yet. It's the wolf versus the sheep. I got news for you, and I'm the watchdog. The wolf wants to distribute the flock. That's you, because, sorry to say, you guys don't have a big turnout. I figured about 1 out of 7 active members voted. Okay, if that happens, the wolf will scatter the herd, and then they will eat you. I mean, that's the analogy.
So, you are still the member of the director, right?
Yes, I'm still on the board now. Yes.
Yeah, it's in the board. Now, why do you think that our pension contribution kept increasing while you are still a board member?
Okay, why is the contribution still increasing since I've been a board member? The fund has to earn at least its long-term assumption to pay your benefits, which is now 7.5. Okay, so if the fund earns less than 7.5, then extra contributions have to be required to make up for that. In the past, let's say 10 years ago, it was the city that had the full responsibility. This is a defined benefit plan. The city has the full risk to make sure the benefits are there to pay you when you retire. There was a ballot measure. How do you change benefits? The short answer is to change any of your benefits, it has to go in front of the voters for approval. And that's what happened. Okay, it went in front of the voters to share the cost among the members, both active and retirees. Okay, so that's what
who
happened.
supported that?
That was Prop C.
Yeah, that was
Why
proposition.
don't you talk about Prop C, because that hurt a lot of city workers.
Yeah.
It was cost shifting, and we had to pay out of our paychecks.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, Proposition C was put on the ballot. Adachi, among others, scared everyone to put it on the ballot, and it affected the contribution levels of employees. Okay, that's what that is, and that's why you're paying more. The board has nothing to do with that. Let me make that absolutely clear. The board does not decide on benefits enhancements. Any benefit changes have to go in front of the voters. For example, Proposition C, number 1, which affected the cost of living adjustment, among other things. Number 2, the police officers and fire officers had a ballot measure in 2002 that raised their benefits. Your maximum benefit now is 75% of your highest salary. Okay, it used to be the same for the safety officers. They put a ballot measure in 2002 which gave them up to a 90% pension, 90% pension. So that's how benefits are changed. It must go in front of the voters. And the board is not involved in that in terms of negotiations or MOUs or any of those things. Certainly the board individually can write a ballot argument to be in favor of a benefit enhancement, which is what happened in 2002. But the board has nothing to do with the MOUs or your contribution rates. How is it relevant to you? The better the fund does, the less contributions are required to pay your benefits. Okay, so that's why this is relevant to you, why you want someone who knows how to invest. Because the better the fund does, the less will be the employer contribution, the employee contributions, yours. And number 2, the better the chances that you'll get a cost of living adjustment when you retire. So that's why it's relevant to you.
So is there a possibility that if our funds do better this year, so we are right now currently paying 12.5%, to go down like 8%?
Well, I don't know the specific numbers, but I'll tell you in general, the better the fund performs, the less you will have to contribute to it. Yes.
Now, I know Local 21 supported you along with SEIU 2 elections ago, or maybe
Yes.
even both, but I especially remember 2 cycles ago, which would have been almost 10 years. And big support. Do you have any idea what happened between then and now to change where they're even acting like they never supported you, or that, I'm just trying to, I don't even know if you know.
I do.
But
The answer is hedge funds. If you look which unions supported hedge funds, Local 21 was very much behind it. Okay, so they want their hedge funds. Local 798 firefighters, Driscoll convinced them for hedge funds. And for the POA, same thing, they want hedge funds. That's why I think this is all about hedge funds and paying higher fees and the obscurity, with the hope that it will lower your risk. This is how the hedge funds were sold. They're saying that it's lower risk and will protect you in the downside. But how do you know? Over the long run, stocks have done better, so you have to be a long-term investor. Okay, so that's why we hold a large percentage of stocks. But going back to your question, the people that are opposing me want hedge funds.
Okay.
And if I lose, there will be a majority of the board that is in favor of hedge funds.
And currently, we're investing, is it 5% or 15%? It
Yeah,
is
5%.
5%.
Yeah, currently 5% of your assets, 5% of 20 billion, $1 billion is invested in hedge funds. It is planned to invest in hedge funds, and we have already invested 250 million, and I can't tell you who. And the other issue is, who are these hedge fund managers? Have you read the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers? They have produced a superb document on these hedge fund managers, many of whom want to do away with defined benefit pension plans, killing the goose that lays the golden egg. They've made their billions on investing in hedge funds and collecting the fees and other asset managers, and now they want to move to a defined contribution plan where you assume the risk, you have to decide on what to investment, and you may outlive your benefits. The nice thing about your pension plan, it's a defined benefit plan, DB, dying breed, because I got news for you, they are trying to do away with those because the employer, the city, has the risk. So if the markets do really bad, then they have to cough up more money, and that's what you're seeing now through the Prop C negotiation, through the arrangement, and that's what it is. So you don't know who the managers are. Many of them may, in fact, be trying to do away with defined benefit plans. Okay? Why is that so important to have a defined benefit plan? You will not outlive your benefits. It's a life estate. Okay? That's what defined, and that's why they're so important to have a life estate. So you will collect benefits for the rest of your life. You don't want to be getting a new job, being a Walmart greeter in your 80s because you've run out of money. Okay? Or you don't want to eat dog food or anything else, you run out of money. And so many people have done that. So that's why defined benefit plans are so important. That's why you want to keep those. Okay? So just to summarize, many of the hedge fund managers are trying to do away with hedge funds, with defined benefit pension plans.
Now, with the 5% hedge funds we're investing now, have you any idea how well they're doing, or has it just been a giveaway?
The question is how well they've done. We saw 1 month's worth of numbers. For the month of October, the pension fund earned 0.11%.
So nothing.
And you're paying 2% of the assets. But that's a monthly number. So to be fair, take 2% of the 2% divided by 12, and that's the monthly fee. They've earned 0.11% for the first month of October.
And secrecy, why are they keeping a secret who the hedge funds are?
That's a good
Why
question.
don't you talk about that?
Well, I'm adamant against this. And
But
maybe
that's
if you come to the
talk
board
about what it
meetings
is. Talk
demanding
about what it is. What are you adamant against? What?
that you know where your money is being invested.
Yeah, we wanna know.
Hello? That's all I'm saying. The staff has stated they will not disclose the names of the managers and the amounts that they've given. And voting on these managers is done behind closed doors in an executive session where there is no input from the public to invest. And going back to your question, we've invested 5% mainly through a lot of the efforts of people like you, because staff's recommendation was 15%. 15% is $3 billion. 2% of $3 billion is $60 a year in just the management fees. Doesn't even include the 20% of the profits.
When we look at your legacy as a board member, how many years was Casciato with you? And in addition, where did it go as far as, say, the supplemental COLAs?
Okay.
What percentages evolved? And would you say he had any participation in that? Partnered with you, separate, or how did you help get that
Okay.
those supplementals?
Question is, how long did we serve together? Casciato started in 1995, and I started in 1992. So all of his 17 years we've served together.
Okay.
He quit in 2012 to retire. So he's been totally out of touch for the last 4 years. Never once have I seen him at a board meeting. Never once have I seen him at a board meeting, even regarding the supplemental COLA that should have been paid, that was not paid.
Right.
Never once did he even attend a board meeting at all. There's just no curiosity there. There's just none there.
When we look at the supplemental COLAs, what's the percentage? You said it could be up to 3.5.
Yes.
How many years was it ever, or was it even 3.5? What were those rates? What would you say your involvement was to get it to where it is, or the average versus his? I'm trying to get your record on us getting more money when we retire.
Well, a lot of it depends on the markets. I think two of the years the supplement was not paid because of Prop C, and then there was litigation that was done, and so those were paid.
Retirees.
Yeah. So the retiree suit did win, and 2 of those were paid to the post 1996 retirees. So there's
Right,
2
the
for
retro,
sure.
right, I remember that.
Yeah. So after that 2 years, it was paid, and you had to sue to get it. I mean, that's the way it came. You had to sue to get that fee.
Right,
What
right.
do you think about conflicts of interest on the board? Wendy Peskin Jordan has investments and is making money off our pensions. I mean, what do you think about that, having a hedge fund operator on our pension board? I mean, somebody that's going to personally benefit from investments. How could that be? Is that legal?
So Wendy Paskin Jordan had to recuse herself and not vote for the bank issues. So she definitely had a conflict of interest on that issue. In terms of the issue on the hedge funds, a lot of it's the culture, the way money is managed. It's what's called through a relationship business. So if our custodian has $20 billion of assets for us, that's the bank that collects our interest and executes the trades and settles the trades. If there's 20 billion there, and Wendy has her own money management firm, then her assets are considered with any kind of rebates in terms of the size. So let's say, for example, she has $500 million that she manages separately, and the fund has 20 billion. Because she has that relationship, then she will get pretty much the same deals that the pension fund gets, regardless of who it is. In the past, our custodial bank used to be Northern Trust, and there was the whole lawsuit that we filed against our fund. So we hired a new custodial bank. So she could pool her assets with the new manager, and she would get a preferential fee arrangement. So there is that. You see the problem? She doesn't have to disclose a lot of that information, so we will never know where her custodian bank is or any other assets, because that's not disclosable. Her relationship as a board member, and those are disclosable under conflicts of interest. In terms of the banking issue, she could not participate in the discussion when we wanted to separate the positions. If you recall, several years ago, I wanted to separate the position between the chairman of the board and the chief executive officer. And for Wells Fargo Bank, it was Jim Stumpf. That was the whole thing for that, because you know mischief is going to happen. If you are the chief executive officer and run the company, and you're the chairman of the board that hires the compensation committee, do you see any problems there? Indeed, there are. So that's what I want to do, and all of the things that have happened subsequently, in turning fire, Jim Stumpf, that's all due because of they didn't separate the two positions between the chief executive officer who does the day-to-day operations, and the chairman of the board that sets policy, including compensation.
So what's happening with Wells Fargo? Are we investing in Wells Fargo?
We still have the investments that we've invested in Wells Fargo, yes.
Are they going to be sold?
I'm not sure. I don't think there's any impetus to sell those investments. There hasn't been.
Have you brought it up?
Not since we last saw each other in terms of trying to change the effect of that. So not yet.
So what other kind of places is our money invested? Where is our money?
Fossil fuels?
Yeah. Where are we invested? We're still about 5% hedge funds. That's a new asset allocation. We're about 50% in stocks. Roughly 15% in private equity. These are the high risk, high return limited partnerships that are pieces of companies that have done extremely well, that charge the same fees of hedge funds, but these are privately owned companies. Hedge funds are pieces of paper that's being sold. Okay, so there's a very, very big difference. I have no trouble paying the fees to our private equity portfolio that's earned their keep and done extremely well. These are high risk, high return. Hedge funds are supposed to be low risk, but they are low return. Okay, so there's a big difference between those. We have real estate is maybe 10 to 15% of our portfolio, and we've added infrastructure, which is a great investment, where we will invest in toll roads or bridges or other kinds of infrastructure investments that have very low volatility, that are very good bond substitutes with collateral. Because bonds are yielding very low now, 2 to 3% for treasuries. So this is a great way of lowering the treasury weight and then swapping that into investments that have higher returns. And even more importantly, that if stocks do very poorly, history has shown that the infrastructure does very well, and in fact is one of the best ways of diversifying the portfolio in a weak stock market.
My next question is, one of my coworkers asked me, and she was a young lady, are we gonna have a pension? And you know, that fear is out there, right? So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, will we have, yeah, defined benefit? They are dying breeds. The next generation may not have those. Because all the wolves, including some of the hedge fund wolves, want to change it to a defined contribution plan. So you have the risk. You decide on the investments. And don't get me wrong, I don't think a lot of you have the investment expertise to choose a lot of those. So that's the problem. If the fund continues, the best example I give you is the Dallas Police and Fire. All police and safety run that fund, and you should see the performance. There's a run on the fund, and they're trying to do away with the defined benefit plan. Dallas Police and Fire, look it up. I'm telling you, that is the worst case scenario, where because the returns are so poorly and so mismanaged, with the fees that we pay, the high fees, comes out of your earnings. So there's a very serious problem about doing away with those. Your benefits are cast in concrete. It's the new entrants that are at risk. They're trying to do away, if there's not enough money to pay the existing members, then they're trying to cut the benefits for new people and actually trying to chip away on the existing members also. There is a risk, particularly with Dallas Police and Fire. That's a very, very legitimate risk.
One reason why I really want to know is because they helped me lose my home. And then once I lost my home, they're here at my job. Keep Your Home California, and they were my mortgage company. And 6 months of nothingness. I've heard so many people talk about Wells Fargo and how they lose your paperwork.
Yeah.
6 months of finding out I can't help you, we can't help you because you make too much. And I was told I didn't have to pay until everything was settled. So 6 months of no payments, and then they want me to pay, and I lost my house. I had to short sell it. I couldn't keep it. And then when I found out about them being here, I was like, I finally got rid of them, but they're still here. So it hurts. It's like, where did that money go? How did they get, I mean, because they dealt with so many people. Are they using our house money to do whatever they're doing to get here? I mean,
Okay,
it's
good
like,
question. The direct answer to your first question is, why are we involved with that? Because we own stocks, particularly in our index fund that holds Wells Fargo. So we own about 0.3% of Wells Fargo shares. So about 1/300th of Wells Fargo Corporation. So that's why we vote proxies. And on the foreclosure issue, this is where a lot of members were very, very upset about this. They came to our board meetings and wanted to put pressure on Wells Fargo, and I heard those stories. I met with them, and it's just heart-wrenching. This one guy, family home, took out a loan against it, and someone knocks on the door and says, are you aware they're selling your house? And he said, what? This was the first time he heard that his house was foreclosed upon. Oh, the paperwork we can't find. They wouldn't return his calls. They lost all the paperwork.
Exactly.
I feel you. I've heard it so much.
And it's so
This
funny,
is wrong.
because I work in the legal department, and I was working at the time in the legal department, so I know all about doing things quickly, timely, and possibly.
So legally, they helped you lose your home. Wells
Legally,
Fargo.
they did, because I provided everything within the same day they asked for. I dealt with 5 different agents in a month. And each one said, oh, we don't have this, oh, we don't have this, but my documentation showing that everything facts went through all the pages, you got everything. Oh, this is outdated, we need to send you this, oh, this, and we have a different agent for you, this agent is no longer here. It's like a whole bunch of nothingness for 6 months.
After they foreclosed, did you keep a track on how many fees went to Wells Fargo from your equity in your house?
Well, it was I actually short sold it. It didn't go into foreclosure because I'd rather short sell it than go there.
How long did it take you to get the house?
How long? No time.
I mean, to buy the house.
To
I
buy
mean,
the-
how
30
long did you
days.
To save
How
up
did
the
you own
money
it?
for the down payment to buy the house and all that?
Oh, I had the down payment from.
You saved money,
Yeah, I had that.
Millions of people lost their homes, and Wells Fargo set up fake, bogus accounts criminally. I mean, imagine if you or I had set up a fake bank account
I'm glad
with the
I
bank.
did.
You know what would happen to us? We go to jail.
Yeah.
They set up 900,000 fake accounts in California,
I heard about that too.
and nobody's prosecuting them.
You know why?
In fact, the CEO left with $100 million. I mean, can you imagine that?
Yeah,
You
I
set up
watched-
2 million
I watched
fake
the
bank
hearings.
accounts, and then Obama and the government, they could be prosecuted because they were coercing the workers to open up illegal accounts. I mean, threatening them, you better open up these illegal accounts. Well, if you coerce somebody to do an illegal action, that's a crime. You can't tell somebody to do something illegal, no prosecution. Are you in favor of prosecution of Wells Fargo? Bank?
Absolutely. And here's the reason why they don't prosecute. They would rather fine the company than put someone in jail. No one has gone over jail over the whole subprime crisis or the discrimination against people of color and Hispanics.
And you know what's
No one has gone to jail over. They would rather fine you and give you a golden parachute. This goes back to what I was talking about early. The head of Jim Stumpf is the chairman of the board and the chief executive officer. So he's going to help negotiate for his compensation
And where was the
package.
POA and Bob Muscat on what was going on with Wells Fargo?
Totally not interested. Totally not interested.
So they were defending Wells Fargo and not saying that they should be held accountable for what they did with our investments in San Francisco.
They voted against our initiative to try to put pressure on the banks when we were having the discriminatory loans against people of color and Hispanics. They voted the other side. Driscoll voted the other way. One of the constructive things, one of the members of the board at that time worked at Wells Fargo. Brenda Wright, she was the Mayor Lee appointed someone else when her term expired. So the good news is at least you don't have the block. Imagine you have someone on the board that works for Wells Fargo. So you try to do change there. So it's been very understand these forces. These forces are very, very strong.
So
So there's hope, going forward. There is hope.
And is President Trump, or President-elect, excuse me, may he never be president, with his upcoming inauguration and term, how do you see the impact to our retirement? Do you see him as a proponent as well for changing it from benefit to contribution, or more of hedge
He's for
funds, or?
deregulation.
Is it deregulation?
Yeah, it's for
Deregulation.
deregulation.
The only constructive thing, the only constructive thing about a Trump administration, if he really does tax the hedge funds, they have their offshore accounts where there's no taxes on them. Like Bain and Company, for example, where Mitt Romney used to work at. I mean, I'd love to have an IRA worth $200 million like him. Okay, they're not taxed. So if Trump does tax the earnings that go into the hedge funds and the Caymans and other areas, that will be constructive. So if you want to put pressure in a constructive way, that is, I think, a very, very good way to put pressure on where you have all of these hedge funds and other money managers, not just the hedge funds, but other money managers that are headquartered in the Caymans, that if those are taxed as it goes in there, it would be very important. Because all the fees we're paying now to the hedge fund managers, if it goes in to their Cayman Islands entity, then there's no taxes on that, so that has to be made up elsewhere. So I think that's the constructive aspect of a Trump administration.
But he's putting Goldman Sachs people on the board.
You say that he doesn't, he's gonna tax. I doubt that. And the reason I doubt that is because what he says and what he does are two different universes. And his action on the carrier company that was making air conditions and getting ready to move south of the border for $3 an hour, and he goes there and does a public drama and ends up giving that company $106 million tax break, is not the same thing that we're saying here that he's going to do. So my understanding from the news reports that I surround myself with is that his interest is in privatizing America. And that means privatizing everything that is public.
Such as your
That means
pension.
the construction of highways and bridges will become private property, the same way they tried to privatize the New York port. The same way they're going to be privatizing bridges if they get an opportunity to. There is no common respect for commons by the general public or the general citizenry of America. So there is not going to be any gracious, standard, steady state happening in America. When he comes in, people are going to be moving real estate and privatizing everything and probably opening up venues that have been closed for tampering, such as your credit unions, who the government cannot borrow from, will have access to those funds, and goodness knows the Golden One and all of the other city funds have a great deal of resources. They could open up our retirement fund and make that a private donor under a private manager, city managers. That's part of the thing, is the way you get away with dispensing with democracy, is that you tell the people you voted in the office, you can't do the job, and the governor appoints somebody. We have Jerry Brown.
Well, let's just look at it from a control, I'll do what I can to keep things the way they are with regard to your pension fund. I mean, I know there's a lot of uncertainty about what he's gonna do and all of that, but, let's just hope that we can defend your pension fund.
What about a public bank right now? What's your position on public banking?
I would like to hear the case for it, because particularly, regarding Wells Fargo and the other,
Well, the city of San Francisco gives money to other banks to hold.
Yeah, that's where our
Okay,
direct
well,
deposit
well,
goes.
why shouldn't it go to a public bank
Thank you.
instead of a private bank? So our profits could go to housing, working class housing. The benefits could go to us instead of a speculator who wants to make more profit. That's what's happening now.
Well, I would like to see a well thought out proposal for that, and I would definitely think it makes a lot of sense in terms of starting a bank. Should we start the bank or work with the bank or
North
do that?
Dakota has a bank.
Yes.
Has a public bank.
That did very well during the
North
Great.
Dakota has a public bank.
I think several
Yeah.
cities are actually beginning to initiate that. I mean, it just makes good sense. Why are you going to put your egg with the fox and your chicken
Yeah, there you go.
when you know the results already? So we need to take not just in the street action, but we need to take action behind the scenes and gather up our good sense and make better judgment. better
One thing I did
decisions.
want to, I'm glad I remember this. One thing I want to talk about is in terms of a bank. I mean, they do loans. I mean, if we had like our own bank, would it be nice if they lent money to city employees, which are good credit risks off the bat, let's face it, those kinds of things. So I think if we talk about a bank, I think we should talk about the kinds of loans and what the money is used for also. And I like to see it targeted. If the San Francisco Pension Fund does initiate a bank, I think we should seriously consider that the loans be made first choice to the city employees. At arm's length, don't get me wrong, at arm's length. Because we know your credit history, we can take money out of your paycheck directly to repay the loan, among other things. Which jogged my memory. Let me tell you, there's a brand new feature that you have. Before you vote for someone, what have you done for me lately? Let me tell you, okay? The defined contribution plan, which is, the board oversees the defined contribution plan, which is currently administered by Prudential. May I ask, how many people here are members of the DC plan? A few of you? Okay. May I ask why the rest of you don't join?
What is it?
Here's what the DC plan is. It's voluntary. You have money taken from your paycheck, which reduces your taxable income. That's a nice start, right? Then that taxable income goes for your segregated account, okay? Now, before you couldn't take money out because of a hardship withdrawal. So you were taxed at a high rate, number one, and to pay 10% penalties. So a lot of people, the young ones that don't have the money to do it, didn't do it, okay? Now there's a brand new feature. Now you can borrow against your DC plan up to half the value of your assets, and you don't have to go to a bank for approval. You like that?
Do you have to have a specific reason for it?
Yeah, do you have to have a specific reason? There's two plans. The 5-year repayment, do it forever you want, but just don't do it. If you do it, don't do anything stupid. I don't want to see this like vacation or whatever. Now the 15-year,
I used to take a long vacation.
if you, yeah, see, that's it. You gotta, that's what I'm saying. It's not for everyone. There's a 15-year loan, like if you want to make improvements on your house or buy a house, take money out of your DC plan and use it for a down payment on a house. Now you can do it
When is that effective?
right now. Go to my website. I have the link right there, so you can actually see the documents. You can actually
So you
link.
pushed for that?
Yes, yes.
When did you push for that?
This was about 2 years in making in terms of offering that plan to the members. So if you check my website, www.herbmeiberger.com, there's a link directly to the DC provider, and you can see what the documents are, and you can actually even apply for a loan directly there. So one more time, up to half of the assets in your account, you pay interest to yourself. It's now prime plus 1, but you really don't care since you're paying, when you repay it, you're paying interest to yourself, not dealing with the bank, and it's much more effective. So how much does it cost? You ready? Are you seated here? What's the cost? There's a $50 application fee and $25 per year. That's it. You like that?
Were you responsible for that?
I was helped involved in it. I certainly voted in favor of it and encouraged its development. Absolutely.
And how long has this been in place?
It's brand new. It's
Like effective when,
it
July
was
1st?
about 2. You can do it right now. It's about 2 years ago. There
it
was
is,
there.
wow.
Yeah, it's effective now. And on our board meeting, our board meetings are taped, incidentally, and we did have discussion at our December 14th board meeting. And I can share the link with you, but if you look at it, our board meetings are taped so you can actually hear the discussion, because I wanted that publicly known so you can have a chance to see all of this. It's a great opportunity. Now, let me tell you.
Can you attend the board meetings?
Okay,
Yeah,
as a
they're
member?
open.
They're the
Yeah,
public meetings, yeah.
everybody.
So let me just summarize, you can borrow up to 50%, half of the value of your account, okay? You pay interest to yourself. If it's for anything, it's a 5-year repayment plan. If it's a house, it's 15 years, and the money is taken directly from your paycheck. Okay, that's why it's so preferential. Now, if you retire, you gotta repay the whole thing.
That's what-
And certain
that's
other,
what I was-
there's certain downside on this, because the money comes.
So how would you pay it? Would they take it from your retirement? Is that how they do it?
And then you pay penalties on it too. You could, so if you take out a loan and then retire, in essence, it's due. So you have to.
Okay, when you retire, it's due.
It's due, yes. Or certain kinds of leaves. If you take a leave of absence and you're not paid, if there's no money from your paycheck to pay it,
Right.
then there's some issues. So it's not for everyone, but it's for most people.
And you don't have to take up to 50%. You
No.
can take whatever amount
I think
instead of
2,000.
going
I
to.
think it's like a
the
1,000 minimum or
Right,
something like that.
right.
1 or 2,000
So
minimum.
this is not everybody can take this defined contribution plan. Is you're saying it's like 401k?
Yes, yeah, like a 401k, but it's a 457 plan, so very, very similar. And the same rules, yeah, DC,
Deferred comp.
yeah, deferred comp plan. Yeah, yeah. So it's another reason, if you're on a tight, see here, why is this good? If you join, it lowers your taxable income. So I think round numbers you can contribute, it depends, let's say 10,000 per year. So if you're making 60,000, you put $10,000 into your account, your taxable income is now 50,000. Your taxable income is reduced by the amount that you contribute. That's why it lowers your income taxes.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars are being spent against you by the Police Officers Association, by Local 21. Why are they spending so much money? The management, MEA, they're spending like a fortune, a lot of money fighting you. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, why do they want it? Why does the wolf eat the sheep? You know, I mean, it's the same question, really. They want it all. you know.
But it's unheard of that hundreds of thousands of dollars would be spent on a pension candidate for city employees?
And a job that doesn't pay anything. That they're dragging Casciato out of retirement because he's the man. I mean,
I don't know, my thing is like.
I don't see why.
There's something array that we don't know about what it is yet.
let me tell you what it costs to
Maybe
run.
after that.
Why don't you tell-
Let me tell you what it costs.
It's not good for us.
See these flyers here? I paid for these out of my own pocket. Okay, I didn't get $185,000 to produce this flyer. It came out of my own pocket. It was done with the Union Printing Shop. Okay, which the bug is right here. I know some people care about these things. Out of my own pocket. What does it cost to do? I don't see what you can spend $185,000 on. Okay, there's about, who could vote for me? There's about 35, figure round numbers, 40,000 active members, 20,000 retirees. So there's round numbers, 65,000 people that can vote.
Can you-
I don't see how you can spend that much money on this election. I really don't see it.
Who are the consultants?
Yeah. I think there's Casciato's hired a legal firm, and he has this donate thing on his website. You notice there's no donate on my website. There's not. Okay, he's seeking contributions from people that really can't afford it to a large extent, as well as money managers.
Is it legal for money managers to contribute to a campaign of a?
For this kind of campaign, I don't think there's any restrictions on the amount of money you can contribute.
Is there an age cap on retirement
you want to retire till you're 80? You want to work till you're 80? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not really. I just really don't want to have one foot in the grave before I can retire. Because when I first started, I'm 50 now. That was a retirement.
Are you
age
serious?
When I first signed up.
Wow.
When I first started,
50.
it
I
was
said,
50.
oh, okay, I'm gonna retire at 50, and then
It went up.
60, 62, I think 65, 67.
I think it's 62 now.
Yeah, the highest multiplier you can get is 2.3% at age 62. So you take 2.3% times your number of years. So let's say 20 years. 2.3% times 20 is 46%. So your pension would be based on 46% of your highest salary.
I'm at 26 years right now.
You look marvelous. I know.
Yeah, I started when I was 21.
Wow,
So
look at you.
I didn't know when I first went to the retirement office, they were asking me how much I want to deduct from my, I'm like, I don't know, I'm only 21, I don't know about retirement. And so I asked her, what would she do? She said, I would have the maximum taken out. So that's what I've been doing since day one.
For the deferred comp plan.
Well, for retirement, for my
Well,
retirement.
for the retirement plan, you don't have no say in how much is taken out.
Now we don't, but in a long time ago when we
Yeah.
started, you could.
You could.
If you
And I had
opted
the
out,
maximum
no,
taken
if
out.
you,
You could go
no,
half
no.
or full retirement. You could opt either to do one or the other.
Yeah, when you could
But
make yourself
that
whole or
was-
not,
that was
but
it.
that was it.
No, I think it had to do with if you wanted to opt in to Social Security, you had a lower contribution rate. But just so you know, the amount that you contribute towards your defined benefit plan, there's no it's cast in concrete. Question is, have I hurt the pension plan? The answer is no. I saw the video that MEA, the management union, is circulating that I somehow caused it. There is no specificity whatsoever. And then I looked at the video that they had. It had to do with the investment in China. Okay, these are high risk, high reward, very illiquid securities in the unlisted A shares of China. And they somehow said that I cost them $37 million because I blocked the vote, and then I flip-flopped on it. Let me tell you what it's like to be a fiduciary, and then you'll understand this and why you want to have someone like me on your board. There is an advantage to invest in these unlisted A shares. When I chaired the investment committee in 2004, I invited other public pension funds that invested in them, money managers that manage these shares, and other diplomats to have an educational discussion. This was 2014. I was the first one to want to invest in these high-risk, high-reward shares. I wanted to get the permit. How do you invest in these? You and I cannot invest in these even now. They're unlisted, so you have to petition the People's Republic of China for permission and an allocation to invest in these. That's called QFII, which stands for Qualified Foreign Institutional Investor. In 2014, I championed this so that we would apply for this allocation. Nothing was done for 2 years, pretty much. And then we get a recommendation, I think it was last June, to invest $400 million in these unlisted A shares. Without the QFII allocation, our consultant didn't even go to China to meet these managers to do their due diligence. The vote was 3-3. Okay, I voted against it. The chairman of the investment committee, who is Leona Bridges, voted against it, and also Malia Cohen. So it was a 3-3 vote. Okay, why? Staff did not do their due diligence, I don't think. They did not even talk about investing in getting the QFII allocation directly. Why is that important? Because if we invest with the broker that has that allocation, then they are the beneficial owners of the shares. The broker is the beneficial owner of the shares. That's why I voted against it. I don't know what could go wrong, but I don't want to find out. Okay, so that's why I blocked it. Then I did my due diligence, met other money, because we didn't know in advance that this would be the recommendation. Then I met with other money managers and wanted to see, should we get the QFII directly and own the shares, number one. Number two, I went to China and did my own due diligence and met the managers. Okay? This is what being a fiduciary is, particularly in a high-risk, high-reward investment. So then, on October meeting, it was voted 7-0 unanimously to invest in those managers. So I want you to know there's a difference between flip-flopping and doing your due diligence to make sure that you make the best decision.
Right.
So that's what that was all about. And how do you know it's $37 million? How do you know what the manager would have invested in? How do you know what the return on what you would have sold on to fund those?
Yeah.
That sounds like a Trump move to me.
The board hires an executive director,
How much is he
and
paid?
300,000 or so, and that person hires all staff. You have to understand, it's the executive director handles all staff. It's the same governance for a corporation, where the board hires a CEO and that's it. Okay, that's it. So the board, so the executive director has made all of those appointments, and some have been good. You know, on our private equity side, you know, and I'm fair with my judgments. We have one of the strongest staffs on the private equity. These are these limited partnerships, high risk, high return. We were number 2 in the country last year in the performance for our private equity portfolio, 15.2% per year for the last year. So it's done very good in terms of our staff, you know. So I don't want to blanket criticize staff. Some have done a superb job, truly.
But on fossil fuel, they were against it.
Fossil fuels.
And the state of California voted to get rid of fossil
Yeah,
fuels.
fossil fuels was more complicated. Let me just tell you some good news. We are looking at it seriously, and this has been my position on fossil fuels. I think the best investments are in our private equity portfolio. I really do. If you want to find a solution to the whole renewables issue in terms of solar, et cetera, I really truly believe the solution is on the private equity side. And in fact, when I chaired the investment committee, I had one of our superb general partners, Dick Gramlich, make a presentation on that, because they have this superb viewpoint on renewables. And in fact, one of their investments, he made the cover story of Time magazine. And he was one of the guests that spoke at our meeting when I chaired the ESG committee, Environmental, Social, and Governance Committee. Okay, so
If you were me in investment in deferred comp, which one would you do?
yeah.
Would you do large cap? Which would you?
The question is, which would you invest in which
If
of the
you were
funds would
me.
you choose? There's many different aspects. Let me just say, the older you are, and I'm speaking for myself too, the more you want to lean towards bonds, towards fixed income. Because if the market goes down a lot, you can't recover. You don't have the time to recover. The bad news is our stable value fund has a very low return now. I think it's 1.5% or so. So it's low risk, low reward. It depends on your risk tolerance and many, many other things. The board does select the different choices. For the younger ones, I would move towards small stocks, because over the long run, small stocks have had higher returns and higher risk than large stocks. So small makes a lot of sense. I'm very constructive towards the emerging markets now, towards China and India, for example, because these countries have 2.5 billion people. These are the emerging markets. They're called BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. This is where the future is.
Unless the economy collapses.
Yeah, unless the economy. But it does lower your risk for a U.S. investor to invest in other markets that move in opposite directions.
You know, Ed Lee is putting out ads, the Chronicle is saying that our pension is too much. What's your view on the attack on public workers for causing a pension crisis? That's what we're talking about, how much we pay in our pensions.
Yeah. If the fund, the target return is 7.5. So if the fund earns less than 7.5, then the employees are tapped to make higher contributions to the fund. That's the way it's set up. So it's important for the fund to do well. So if the returns are low, then it's going to require greater contribution for both the city and for members.
Yeah, but there's a political attack on public worker pensions.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
does Ed Lee and these politicians stand on that? They blame us for the problems in the city.
Yeah, because money is fungible. If a higher contribution rate is required, then it takes money from other resources, and that's the nature of it. And to that point, it was the controller that sued the city for the Proposition C for paying the 2 COLAs to the pre-1996 retirees. So this was the city behind
And where
this.
was the POA and Bob Muscat and the COLA lawsuit?
POA was at the end of it. They agreed. I was
They jumped on
the last minute. I was the strongest proponent of granting the benefits to the pre-1996. I can't tell if someone retired before 1996 or after 96. So for me, I don't see the distinction. I see them all as the same class. So I was the earliest component of giving that benefit to the members. The police and fire came on reluctantly at the end. They were asking for city attorney opinion on the lawsuit. They were asking for city attorney opinions, not saying we should do it. So the police and fire were at the last,
So
came
they
into the.
weren't really fighting to
No.
keep the cost of living.
No, not at all.
So they weren't really fighting for the majority employees and keeping
Not
the
for the
cost of living,
retirees.
retirees, yeah.
I didn't see it.